I said that to you the other day, didn't I? Probably. Anyway.
Mr. Taylor, did you fill in the piece of paper on your way in? There was a stool, people were writing their names, just to record that they were here. And maybe Joyce, could you?
Yes.
You did it, you filled in?
It's there, yes.
Thank you. I'm sure you like my questions. Thank you. Well, it's been 6:30. We'll start this ordinary meeting of Council for the 17th of March 2020. To start the official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. I have 6 councillors present, with apologies from Councillor Dave Petrusman. Councillors, do I have any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest for tonight's agenda? No, thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council from the 18th of February 2020.
Yes, Mayor, I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held on the 18th of February 2020 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that? Thank you. Councillor Neiman, any objections to that? No? I declare that carried. Now we come to public question time, where we hear from members of the public, ask questions or address council. I'll ask in a minute to suspend standing orders. We allow in our local law 30 minutes for public question time, with an extension by resolution of council. Each speaker has 3 minutes in which to speak, and a question may be disallowed if it relates to a matter outside the duties or function of council, or is defamatory or otherwise unpleasant to our partner or us, is aimed at embarrassing a councillor or member of staff, or relates to personnel matters, industrial or contractual matters, or legal advice. So with those restrictions, I'm sure we can find plenty to talk about, and I'll ask for a motion.
Did you say that they'd be recorded?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I always forget to say that. That in fact, council meetings are audio and video recorded, and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. So when you speak to council, your voice will be recorded. However, you won't be on camera. The camera's pointing firmly at this table and no one's moving it. So just be aware of that. Thank you, Councillor Machin. First of all, motion to suspend standing orders. Thank you, Councillor Cordy, seconded by Councillor Neiman. So who would like to speak to us first? Ms. Free, would you like to come up? You had your hand up there.
Thank you. This one's working? This one's working? No? This one's working? No?
Thank you. My name's Mary Free. Last council meeting, I addressed a letter to council on behalf of myself and my husband Ramon, and finally the reply came today. Thank you very much. I was a little bit disappointed that as it was addressed to councillors, our elected representatives, that initially I received a reply from the CEO, who then forwarded it to the acting director of infrastructure. I felt that as 6 of 7 councillors voted for a climate emergency declaration, it should have been quite straightforward to be able to be answered by the people that voted it in. So that was the only feedback from that I have is in one of the questions we asked exactly what legally binding laws, rules and regulations this climate emergency declaration places upon the residents and ratepayers of this shire. The answer to that question I find is a little bit ambivalent, saying no new additional legally binding laws, rules and regulations are directly implicated by this declaration. And I was wondering, does that mean there are indirect implications of this? So that would be something I would like clarified. The reason I'm here tonight is to ask about the upcoming council elections in October, and I've noticed that other shires, Macedon and other shires, are holding council candidate information and training sessions, and they're saying that those are required to be attended by anyone considering nominating in the council elections. So I haven't seen any put out by this shire, and I wondered if they are compulsory to attend before nominating, because it should be good for our shire to have plenty of advance notice. And if you could just clarify that for me, Madam Mayor, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Brett. Well, first of all, about your question about the no new additional legally binding laws, rules and regulations being directly impacted, the technical nature of that would require me to seek internal advice from our officers about if there's any indirect, because the number of laws, regulations and rules applying to council are quite lengthy. I find it hard to imagine, but you know, I can't just as a councillor answer that. Moving on to councillor training, I know that this organisation has already held one training session for those interested parties some time ago. However, information for people. However, the training, which is indeed, I believe, mandated, and now the law has been passed, and maybe I better pass you to the CEO because it is very much in the new law. Or maybe I should ask Ms. Holt to speak on it because you have the handle on all that.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've only just identified a mutually agreeable date by the provider. So under the Local Government Act, there is compulsory training that has to be undertaken by candidates and currently sitting councillors if they are going to nominate. We've located an authorised provider that the government is happy to use. We've come up with a date for the first training session, which is the 13th of August. And we were actually about to start getting organised to advertise that. Thank you. We're getting ready to advertise that next week. Our focus has changed a little bit with COVID-19, but we've just actually set that date this week with the provider. And that will be one of the compulsory training sessions, and we'll be really clear in our advertising about that because we don't want people to be confused by the fact that there are other training sessions happening in the region. But it is this particular compulsory one that everyone who wants to nominate has to go to.
And that'll be in both the Midland Express and the Castlemaine Mail?
Yes, it will, yes.
All right, thank you very much for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holt. The next person who wishes to speak to us, yes, Ms. Sanders, would you like to? There might be somebody behind the lectern that I can't see. Oh, sorry. Well, we'll have Ms. Sanders and then we'll have you to the lecture.
I can't really ask questions without my notes here. My printer wasn't working. Yes, I've got Joyce Sanders, retailer in Barker Street here. I came tonight because I'm possibly the only person in Castlemaine who actually wants to get the virus. I think if we're going to have a peak of it in numbers in a month or so, I'd much rather be at the beginning of the curve rather than at the end when they've run out of beds. So this does relate to my question because my respiratory illness is related to intensive passive smoking when I was a child in a smoking family. And it means that smoke is really harsh for me. And I wanted to simply ask tonight if there was any chance that council could put little no smoking signs on the seats on the footpath. The reason for this is when we have smokers congregating on these seats now, as they do because they can no longer sit at the cafe tables, it becomes a real problem for people who have those seats outside their businesses. The chemist at the corner is really concerned about the way the smoke billows into where people are going to get their medicines in the chemist shop. And of course, when the wind changes, it funnels up the footpath into my shop. And if council were willing to put a little no smoking sign on all the seats, but in particular this one, it would not require any change of local laws because the seat is actually closer than the legal distance from the cafe tables outside the bakery. So it actually is a non-smoking area anyway. And I simply want to spend these last days in a smoke-free environment before I go into hospital with this virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce, and we certainly hope that you stay out of hospital and stay well. No smoking signs on the seats in Barker Street.
Is it possible?
Do I ask our CEO about that? Do I ask Director of... I think so. I think it's not something we can actually decide on now. We appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not very pleasant experience for any of us to take in other people's stale cigarette smoke as I'm walking past. Personally, I get very upset when I find that I'm walking behind a smoker in the street and have to cross the road or whatever. But if you're stranded in a place and subjected to it in one place, it must be quite awful. I think, yes, it's something we have to do some measurements and see if it's possible.
And thanks for the concept, Joyce. I think we need to check and see whether that makes legal sense, that is the case. I think that's the first thing we'll just need to have a look at to see if that logic is there. And if it is there, then it's an interesting proposition. Yeah, so let us have a look at that and see whether that is something that is legally the case, and we'll go from there. So we'll let you know. Thank you.
I'll hand you.
Yes, please.
This is a map of the area that we're concerned with and our points briefly about the area. If you wouldn't mind taking one each and let me have the rest back afterwards.
My name's Robin Lewis and this is Ian Edwards. We're doing a joint presentation this evening about the Froomes Road Bridge. We're representing other people in the area, some who haven't come because of the COVID-19, but there have been community meetings and emails, and what we are presenting tonight is on behalf of other people as well. What Ian is handing around is a map of the bridge, Froomes Road, Mary Street, Richards Road area with some things marked on it, and a dot point summary of the issues that we're going to speak to today. at the last council meeting, a motion was passed to replace the Froomes Road Bridge at a cost of over $1 million. This came as a shock to local residents who were totally unaware of the development. From the same meeting minutes, they were further surprised to learn that the process has been underway for over 2 years, and yet council staff had not thought it relevant to engage with the local users and the community. Learning of the bridge replacement after the tender had been awarded seems inconsistent with council's own principles of listening to our communities and respecting their views. In fact, in the minutes from the last meeting, there was a section headed Communication and Consultation. And I quote, "How we will keep our community informed, listen to and acknowledge concerns and aspirations, and provide feedback on how community input influenced this decision. We will seek community feedback on drafts and proposals." End of quote. This did not happen. As long-term locals, we have a great knowledge of the site and the situation which we can bring to the discussion to better inform the decision-making. For example, a simple traffic counter cannot tell you that this one-lane bridge works very well as residential traffic is spread throughout the day, and the bacon factory workers are generally all travelling to or from work at slightly different times, but never all at the same time and in both directions. It also acts as a natural traffic calming device. The bridge works. No one can recall an accident there, whereas at the Blind Mary Street bend, numerous cars have missed that corner and gone over the embankment. This short stretch of road contains many traffic warning signs, and they're all marked on the map that you've got. From dangerous intersection ahead, 2 separate sections have speed reductions down to 30 kilometres, there's a horses sign, etc. We could have also told council that there was an agreed North West Castlemaine traffic management plan created when the bacon factory was expanding in the early 2000s. And again, when the George Weston Foods took over the ownership, further discussions and agreements regarding traffic were made. These maintained the rural residential nature of the area and were designed so that trucks would use Walker Street to access the factory, as all agreed that Mary Street was totally inappropriate for regular truck traffic. To this end, factory driveways were angled to receive trucks from Walker Street, and council erected the large local traffic area "Please drive carefully" signs at the bridge and at Mary Street. The starting point for this discussion should have been updating this traffic management plan and not just looking at the bridge in isolation. On last meeting's agenda, the list of reasons for the bridge replacement are all focused on increasing the width and weight for assorted heavy vehicles, but there is no mention of heritage, environment, rural residential nature of the area, which are all factors of great value. Currently, there is a 30-tonne weight limit, which is sufficient for fire trucks, garbage trucks, etc., and there are also other access roads into the area. I'll just pass over to Ian to follow on with a few more points.
Yeah, okay, I think we're well into your
That's my
4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Another 2.5.
Thank you. Well, once again, let me quote your own very wise words to you, because we quite respect the intelligence that you've shown as a council and as council officers. The foreword to your council heritage strategy states, and I quote again your very clever words, "Mount Alexander Shire is graced with a wonderful natural and built heritage, which underpins our economic viability and our lifestyle." Surely this should be a major factor in the discussion about the Froomes Road Bridge. It's in the immediate proximity of the Botanic Gardens, of course, one of Victoria's oldest regional gardens. The whole vicinity around Froomes Road Bridge is precious for Castlemaine. The erection of a great concrete 2-lane structure built to be suitable for triple axle trucks, which is on your recommendations, would seriously damage the heritage environment and the natural beauty of Castlemaine as a town. By the same token, the local traffic would increase, livability would be compromised, and safety for all users, especially pedestrians, would be put at risk. There are many features of the area which combine to make it significant environmentally. The Botanic Gardens, the creek, the bridge, the railway line buttresses, the beautifully restored 1870s wall, the Burnett Road Heritage Precinct, the general natural ambience, the mature eucalypts, the pines. It all combines to make this locality important for residents, yes, but for everybody in Castlemaine and for visitors to Castlemaine. It's recognised by the council,
Could you wind up,
Okay.
please, and then-
Heritage Victoria and the community at large. Let me again quote your words, Council. This area is special for the manner in which the gardens and surrounding streetscape landscape combine to produce a significant late 19th century and earlier 20th century precinct, and the surrounding area provides an important visual backdrop for the gardens. A great whacking two-lane bridge will completely destroy all of this. We welcome the Council in our epic battle to preserve this bridge.
Thank you. We've heard from, thank you for limiting yourselves to and presenting very well presented arguments in favour of keeping keeping the bridge as it is. I am lacking in the total reasons for the replacement of that bridge, the details. But I am sure that our Director of Infrastructure and Development would be able to give me a few more details on why that particular bridge was targeted as opposed to the other 220 bridges, of which probably about 40 are in a fairly serious state of needing replacement.
And we are offering
And
our bridge to you.
The people of
Please
Vaughan
take it.
certainly did that, and they lost their bridge, and the people of on the Reedsdale Sutton Grange Road have a new bridge thanks to that, but the Vaughan Bridge was never replaced. You might be in a slightly different situation being into town. However, why that bridge, and rather than one of the many other bridges that are urgently needing attention? Maybe you could help us, Mr. Martini.
Just probably a few of the details, and in summary, certainly the condition of the bridge was one of the things that was initially considered, so that was the first prompter for that. But then looking at things like the current traffic volume that is on Froomes Road there, which is in excess of 1,200 vehicles a day, from the point of view of standards warrants two-lane bridge, looking at the other safety that's there, so the bridge railing was one of the areas that were identified that it doesn't meet any of the current safety standards and is in large way a risk to current users, as well as some of the ancillary things about providing alternative access or access during an emergency, so providing both access into and out of that area should there be an emergency, bushfire, etc., and looking at some of the other broader things such as alternative access to the hospital, for example. So there really was a range of issues that went towards identifying that bridge for replacement.
Thank you. That's it from their point of view. However, I think at this stage, because we are, it's not a question and answer session at this stage, but we are meeting on Friday, I believe.
Yes,
so the concerns of the people in the region of Froomes Road, Mary Street and Burnett Street and Burnett Road, I think so, yes, have been heard, and there will be a meeting again with selected individuals, not too many of us gathering at one place at a time. Sounds like we're in a terrorist attack, doesn't it? That's awful. But no, it's different. But yeah, we have to face the reality at the moment on Friday. So I will be there, the CEO will be there, Mr. Martini will be there, and Councillor Machin, and we're looking forward to being able to discuss further what you've raised and seek out possible responses from council. In most cases, when a bridge is going to be replaced, we aim to replace 2 bridges each year. That's our allocation. That's how much we can afford. We'd like to be able to replace 6 bridges a year. Then maybe we play catch up. At the moment, we're not playing catch up. So every year, more bridges fall into the seriously needing to be replaced category because of lack of funds, basically. That's all we can allocate from our government allocation of money for repairing roads and bridges. So
we heartily sympathise with you and support you.
And so we aim to do 2 each year, and this one obviously has thrown up problems which were not identified, and we recognise that. In this case, it is a sensitive area. Engineers are perhaps not the best people to, when they're focusing on the nature of bridge, to recognise that there is a problem. And I think, Heritage Officer going to be there? Probably not, but no, she's already been there. Right, so the bridge that was built back in the 1870s is no longer with us. We know that. Maybe the stone abutments belong to that old bridge, but everything else has been replaced in the 20th century, and it's a bit of a mishmash, and it's also got some pretty important essential services attached to the bridge, which certainly shouldn't be in this day and age, and they need to be removed. That's quite an expensive process too, to redirect those. Anyway, getting into details, Councillor Machin, you wish to say something as a Castlemaine councillor, please do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very thorough listing, point 4. I look forward very much to speaking with you. I'd also like to thank the residents who raised their concerns in very constructive ways. And that's we can say, okay, we can change, and it's much easier to deal with that constructive approach. So thank you very much.
Could I just make one quick point that it is on behalf of the residents, of course, but as the movement has got larger, we're amazed at the number of people from all of Castlemaine who are not residents of the area who see the value of that area also.
Thank you. Indeed. Well, I have some very beloved grandsons who live beyond that bridge, and I know it well. I love that wall. I love that wall. Thank you. You're pointing out the fact that we're almost out of time. Thank you. We have 3 minutes. And we certainly got Mr. Bell and Mr. Taylor wish to speak. So I think maybe before we call on you to, we might just have a motion to extend public question time by 10 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Machin. Yes. Who's first? Just for the record.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My name's Robin Taylor. I've got, firstly, I've got a comment, and secondly, I've got a request. The comment is that I was present last council meeting when Mrs. Free asked a question of, I think there were 6 councillors, issued them with a set of questions regarding the climate emergency. I think it's a bit disappointing to find that that was then duck shoved to the CEO, then duck shoved to Brett Martini, without one councillor having the audacity or the decency to answer those questions. They passed the motion, they should have been able to answer the questions. My request is that I'm an avid bike rider that some of you should be well aware of, ride to Guildford and back 5 times a week probably. The bike path, if you could call it a bike path, down through Campbell's Creek is an absolute disgrace. In the 15 years I've been riding a bike, I don't believe it's been swept once that I'm aware of. There is no curb and channelling in Campbell's Creek, which means every time it rains, whatever's allegedly in the so-called gutter ends up on the bike track, and in some places around Thompson's Transport and past the Digger's store down to the post office is an absolute nightmare. I don't want to ride on the right-hand side of the white line, I want to ride on the left-hand side of it. I know we've got a sweeper, could we please use it? If you want to encourage people to ride a bike, at least make the track reasonably safe, especially for old buggers like me that really don't feel comfortable hitting the road. And the second comment is probably I rode from Muckleford Station to the Malden Station the other day. I don't do it very often. That alleged bike track is an absolute disgrace from the point of view it's not safe. It gets washed away every time it rains. I understand it's going to be hard to do anything with it. I'll agree with that. But I've no way known I'd take me, not that I've got any kids that young, but there's no way known any kid should ride out along there under 15 or 16-year-old. It's just plain and simply dangerous because it's not flat, it's hilly. I know you can't do anything about that. The bits that have been done properly over the Muckleford Creek and that are really good, but the rest of it's just plain dangerous. Seriously, it is just dangerous. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Taylor. Yes, I remember your bike riding activities from Councillor Day. Mr. Martini, I've certainly asked for the bike lane between here and Tewton to be swept because I don't ride a bike, but I pass people on their bikes commuting into town in the morning, and I'm aware of how often they have to go into the traffic lane because of the gravel. And so it certainly is a concern. So.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, that's right. As you know, they're Vic Roads roads. However, we are doing that. We were doing it for a while out through Tewton and then stopped doing it. We've started doing it again, and I think we can have a look at what's going on the Midland Highway as well and see if we can't provide the same service. You're right, we've got the sweeper there, and we'll look to see if we can include that in our route for the sweeper. And as for the section of the trail, we'll have a look at that and see whether there's anything we can do. It sounds like it's in those tricky areas, but we'll have a look at it and see whether there's anything we can do.
Thank you. Don't forget the council's online request is just that if the gravel is there again, fill in something online and send it up. You have clout as an ex-councillor. Yes, Mr. Bell.
No, I think he wants me to go first.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep.
I haven't got one for each. Can I just pass those down for people to look at? Question?
I'm Beth Phillips, Secretary of Malden Urban Landcare Inc, or MOLGA. Over the last 3 years, MOLGA has carried out significant work in the Malden area to survey Indigenous eucalypts that have been growing from before pre-European settlement. We have recorded 64 trees on public and private land and 199 trees on council-managed roadsides in and on the perimeter of Malden, plus a further 44 trees on the Malden Historic Reserve. The data for all 307 pre-1852 trees have been entered on the Victorian Biodiversity Atlas and have also been provided to council officers. And we understand that the data are on the council's mapping system. The tree in the photo, taken 2 to 3 weeks ago, the right-hand photo, is a grey box with an estimated age of 295 years and is situated near the football oval at Bellwoodville Reserve. The severe pruning was carried out late last year, although we only discovered it in early January. In addition to the work done on this tree, another grey box at Bellwoodville Reserve with an estimated age of 205 years and in an area not used by the public was marked for removal, and the tree has since been cut down. The small extent of dead branches did not seem to justify the tree's removal. We of course fully understand that unhealthy trees need to be managed to reduce hazards in public reserves and roadsides. and we know that Council has employed a tree assessment officer for this work. I note, however, that following a mini tornado that went through parts of Maldon in June of last year, much more sensitive and acceptable pruning of 2 pre-1852 eucalypts with reasonably significant storm damage was carried out in the primary school grounds, a place where safety is paramount, and they have an arborist audit every year. We don't know if the contractors working at Billwood Full Reserve were advised about the significance of the trees they were working on. An email was sent to the relevant council officer in January about what has happened, and in particular asking if the current roadside tree maintenance program applies only to the urban roads of Maldon and not to the more rural roads on the periphery of town, where the vast majority of the pre-1852 eucalypts on roadsides are situated. No reply has been received. Mulga had a meeting with Phil Josipovic, Stuart Campbell and Kath Olive mid-last year about the pre-1852 eucalypts and gaining improved protection for them. We were advised that a significant tree register is not needed as the processes in place are sufficient. We do not consider this to be acceptable. Also, as part of the draft Maldon Design Guidelines consultation process, recent conversation with Strategic Planning Department staff has indicated that they have no knowledge of the pre-1852 eucalypts in Maldon. It seems that amending the planning scheme to establish a heritage overlay for these very significant trees, as recommended to us by Mandy Jean, the Council's Heritage Advisor until this week, I note, may be considered by Council to be too difficult to achieve. As an alternative and interim measure, Mulga requests that a significant tree register be established for the Mount Alexander Shire as a matter of some urgency. It is very apparent both with this occasion and previous occasions that council officers do not check the mapping system for special trees. Thank you.
Oh dear.
Yes, it's appalling.
Can we get some response, Darren, on... I must admit I haven't noticed, but then again, the training's only just restarted, haven't been around that area for the last couple of months.
Yes, of course. Councillor Gardner will follow up and look into that. There are assessments done on all of the trees, and trees that are assessed to be unsafe and high risk certainly do get taken down from time to time. We'll have a look at what the process was that was undertaken for those 2 trees, Bev, and talk to you some more about that and take on your request for getting the significant register in some form, making sure that that's happening, because the significant, the comment, if I may, Mayor, about the maybe too hard, I'm not sure about the context for that comment and I'm being too hard. Bringing something into the planning scheme is very expensive, that's true. Whether that equates to too hard or not, I'm not sure.
That's what we've been told by council staff.
Was too hard equals too expensive, or?
Both.
Yeah. So there's no question, planning scheme amendments are expensive, but that doesn't mean we can't have something else in place, and we'll just see what that is that we have got at the moment and whether or not, clearly there wasn't advice to use, but it provided the basis for that decision, but we'll have a look at what the basis for the decision was and talk to you some more about it.
Thank you. I think the work that Maldon people have done to identify the significant trees is quite remarkable. And when I became aware of it first, I was most impressed. I know certain trees around the district, but in Maldon you have really gone to the effort of identifying your pre-settlement trees, and that's a great thing. And to see one damaged, if not destroyed in this way, is very distressing. So I think we have to ensure as hard as you can that no further damage gets done. I know that storms do wreak havoc, and we have lost some beautiful trees to the storms we've had in recent years. anyway, we'll see what can happen.
It is resprouting, but that will be very weak growth, so.
Yeah.
It is disappointing. I mean, Bev has mapped these trees, reported to the council, made them aware of it.
And we keep being told, yes, we'll
Yeah.
look at it, we'll do something. Nothing happens. Sorry, I'm very passionate about these trees.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's now on our list, and we'll
Thank you.
do everything we can. Thank you.
Oh, I'll just get my pencil if I may. Excuse me.
Yes, Tony, Mr. Bowell, can you speak to us?
Working. Tony Bell, ratepayer, ex-councillor. In 2017, there was 15k in the budget for toilet line curtains advertising our shire. Where has that money gone?
Sorry, there was $15,000 in the budget.
15k.
Put on the trucks. Is that the one?
Ah, yes, right.
I think we took it out.
We did take it out.
We took it out. The last budget.
We took it out.
As it was below the line, we couldn't get up by.
Right.
You took it out for what reason?
Within the draft, didn't make it in the final cut.
May I?
No, it was a carry forward.
It was a carry forward project of council, so we didn't get it done the year that it got put into the budget, Tony, and we brought, as you know, the process of bringing projects to council from year to year to say, we haven't got this delivered, would you like us to carry this over into the following year? So we asked the councillors if they wanted that to happen, and that project, the answer was no. That's why there's nothing in the budget for that project.
So for 15k, over the journey of say 15 years of advertising our shire up and down the east coast, rather than cutting down trees and printing brochures that people just read and then throw in the bin, was just thrown away, was it? For 15k.
It was reallocated.
Reallocated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, I'm not finished. Footpath down Yangle Street from Winters Flat Primary School was agreed in principle by councillors, as it was to complement the Sheriff's Bridge upgrade when it happens. What happened there? Because there now I can see there's a footpath going along Bowden Street where virtually no one walks, because everyone leaves Ray Street and walks down Yangle Street onto Golden.
Well, my memory, and the CEO can correct me or otherwise, was that we, in response to your request as a councillor, the detailed designs were done at some cost, quite a considerable cost, 10% of the final budget, as you know. And when the designs came in, they were determined to be non-compliant with the required standards of steepness for footpaths, so we were unable to allow the footpaths to go there. Even though we acknowledged, I think the whole council acknowledged, that's where people walk, we weren't allowed, by the rules, to build the footpath there.
Mayor Henderson.
So that money actually was wasted.
There was no state government legislation on pitch, on
I think it's something to do with disability.
if you remember going back a few years, the developers up near the old prison were required to put a footpath down past the prison. I think it was in Edward Street or Charles Street, which is actually steeper than Yandle Street.
Well, we're not having a debate here.
No, I'm just telling you the
Just say
facts.
that was the.
So you can't have one. You can't say Yandle Street's too steep when Charles or Edwards, I can't think which one it was, is steeper. But council deemed that the developer up near the prison put a footpath down there. So you can't go both ways. So I suggest council go back and have a bit of a look at that.
How many questions have you got? Because
Well, I've got 3 minutes, haven't I?
Well, you've got, we've got 32 seconds.
Righto, I'll use up my 32 seconds and then some.
Well, we'll use it.
If you keep on talking, you're using it up for me.
Yeah, no, you've got
And once again, why haven't councillors responded to Mary Free's questions instead of the CEO?
You want me to answer that? Well, I think the answer is, even though they weren't your questions, they were actually hers.
Yes, correct.
There were 3 questions that out of the 5, which actually required an official, if you like, response about it being legally binding laws, or declaration affiliated or regulated by the United Nations, or hasn't placed our shire under any other rules or regulations imposed by state or federal government bodies or department. And you did that checking, right? And that's done by the people who get paid to do that.
You passed the motion, should have known that before you passed the motion.
Thank you.
Finally, I'll shoot some of Brett Martini's comments down in flames if you're talking about the bridge.
Excuse me, just be careful.
No, I'm just hang on.
Excuse
It's
me.
my time.
Tony, please don't.
No, I'm going to.
Okay.
You're talking about the bridge deck and the guardrails. Go to Galton Street. You've got some plastic fencing on one corner, and you're worried about Froomes Road.
Thank you.
Seriously, you people, you need to have a good hard look at yourselves.
Yeah.
Anyone else wish to speak to council? No, I think we're out of time, right? So I need a motion to resume standing orders. Thank you, Councillor Machin and Councillor Newman. Thank you. And those people who would prefer to leave at this stage, we're not insulted if you leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry.
Well, councillors, let's move on. So we have now petitions. We have received a petition submission from people who I persuaded was probably best not to attend council meeting given their the current conditions and the fact that they are classified as elderly, though they might be a bit insulted if I said they were so. They brought a submission, one of those non-compliant petitions, from a large number of people about us providing or there being a safe crossing of Barker Street in the region of Parker Street to allow people access to Botanic Gardens. And the CEO is looking at it now, but I think it's non-compliant but as a petition. However, it is asking to make Castlemaine a safer pedestrian environment, minimise the risk of an accident along this busy section of Barker Street. A pedestrian island or a median strip is necessary to enable safe pedestrian access to the shops, businesses and residences on either side of Barker Street, as well as access to key Castlemaine places along Parker Street West. No safe pedestrian crossings currently exist in this location, and the school crossing nearby only operates during limited school hours. Crossing the street on foot can be very risky, especially for the elderly, the mobility impaired and those with young children. Parker Street West in particular is a busy street due to the level crossing in Kennedy Street, which provides access to key places such as, and you saw the places on the other side. Another thing to be considered is reducing the speed limit from 60 to 50 as limited visibility along Barker Street is a further risk. And this is presented to Mount Alexander Shire. Unfortunately, it doesn't have people's address. It has the opportunity for people to put their addresses in, but most people just put their phone number in because that's easier. However, I'm sure Council can take this as a significant submission from a lot of people, including businesses, asking for us to consider, and that I'm sure can be put in front of Vic Roads, Regional Roads Victoria, to further our support for this very much needed crossing of the road, their road. Yes, Councillor Machin.
Given that we've acknowledged this, are we going to respond to it at the next meeting?
That's a very good question.
It's not, we can't table it as a petition per se, but we'll work on acknowledging it in one way or another. Councillor Motion, at the next meeting, hopefully. This is one that we know a lot about because it's a project that you and I particularly have worked pretty hard with Marie Edwards and others on, and Rural Roads Victoria, to try and get to happen. So we'll see if we can't get something together in time for the next meeting agenda, just to acknowledge that it's there and also that it aligns very well with the work that we've been trying to do to see this happen. So,
well, technically speaking, CEO, there's enough addresses in there to make it a joint letter. You only need 2.
That's a good point.
And so it could be responded to as a joint letter with a lot of supporting signatures.
Sure. So we'll either attempt to do that, or we'll get a report that acknowledges that work, as you did for one of the other ones that didn't meet the requirements, so that it is recognised formally by council me.
Thank you. Committee reports? No? So, record of assemblies of councillors, got a recommendation here.
Yes, Mayor, I'll move that the council notes the record for the assemblies of the councillors is required under the Local Government Act 1989.
Have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Cordy, any opposition? No? Right, declare that matter carried. And we move on to our officer reports, first of all being the Waste-Wise events policy. Would some council like to move a motion talk about this? Yes.
I'll just move as printed.
That we adopt the policy?
That we adopt the policy.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Machin.
And you would like me to talk to it?
I certainly would. Thank you.
Any objection?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Are there any objectives? No. Right. We'd like you to talk about it.
Thank you. So this is a policy that is applicable to all council events, Section 86s and council-funded events. I know on the face of it there'll be people who aren't going to like it, but the reality is that this is about supporting our organisations and our community to reduce waste, which obviously is an advantage to us as a shire, and to better utilise things like water and stuff like that. So that's why we support it. It doesn't take effect straight away. There's like a 2-year period, and the council will support organisations to work to it, and obviously there'll be a cost for that as well. In the long term, I think it's a good idea, particularly reducing use of plastics and waste. I think it's a good policy, and I know that the council will implement it collaboratively with the event organisers and Section 86 over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Machin, would you like to speak?
Thank you, and I know a lot of consultation and engagement has already happened on this policy. And I also note that there are a whole lot of things happening at the state level where there are a lot of announcements coming out without the similar engagement. But never mind, it's good to see some changes happening at the state and federal level. This will keep changing over the 2 years, so we may, in fact, we have been promised a container deposit scheme happening by the time this has to be implemented. So it's a fluid context, environment. Our officers are very prepared and flexible to help and assist us all to reduce our waste, which means it's a reduction for our levies and therefore a benefit for our community financially as well as waste-wise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Yep. Councillor Lehman.
the only thing that saves this policy is the 2-year shakedown bit. I think it's unnecessary and improper.
That's an objection.
No, it's a comment.
Any other councillor wish to speak? No? All right, well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. And yes, it will be a very interesting development, I think. Some of the things that are working hard. We had the Taradale Mineral Springs Festival, probably the last festival to happen in this shire for a while, I think, unfortunately, where we had, I think, just shy of 4,000 people attend the Food and Wine Festival, lots of music over the long weekend, well, one day, the long weekend, and we had the Wash Against Waste people there, so there were no throwaway plates or glasses, etc. There were some coffee cups that were disposable. That's still a big challenge, I think, for people who serve coffee, to find something that can be reused, and certainly there weren't any gas-filled balloons being released, which is a crime these days with the shortage of helium in the world. It goes up, it doesn't come back down again. All right, moving on to the community engagement policy, which is another policy being adopted by council. Slightly ironic, and I'm rather relieved that the Froomes Road Bridge people have departed. However, it will guide us from now on to do better. Who would have thought it with bridges? Never mind. Here we've got a motion to adopt it, and Councillor would like to move that. Councillor Machin, and seconded by Pepperdown.
Not as recommended. No, it's not as recommended.
Right, so you're moving that.
Council adopt the community. The council adopt the community engagement policy, with the purpose of this policy is to guide best practice community engagement processes to do good consultation that influences our decision making.
As a purpose. Thank you. Thank you. So that's your motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cordy. Is there any opposition? Councillor Neiman. In that case, Councillor Machin, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. A couple of points here, Mayor. So one, we have to get our community engagement policy underway. It's part of the new Act. We're going to have to be prepared for the next council is going to have to be prepared to do a lot of engagement. The rules of deliberation are changing, and this is really setting us going. So this policy is the top level, and it's really about telling our community that we are going to engage with them, and that will hopefully will inform our decisions. And that there are a number of factors we will take into account, and that's included in here. And underneath this document then is the practical stuff about how this policy will work with our community. We as councillors have seen the underlying procedures and toolkit and have had our chance to talk about that as well. It's a new world we're entering into with the new Local Government Act. It's very clear about requiring greater deliberation, and yet there's very little around our capacity to respond to that in terms of finances. We are really listening to our community and finding out, sometimes to our shock, that there are things that the community thinks we should have consulted on, in which in the old days they would have been saying, yoo-hoo, more bitumen and more bridges, fabulous, and now they're not saying that. So the underlying tools around this are to get into our heads those questions that say, yeah, we think it's really simple, but perhaps it isn't. What do our residents think about this place and what's important to them. And we have quite often got it right and quite often got it wrong. So hopefully this policy and the underlying tools are going to get us to the stage where we get into the mindset of our residents, understand it better, and also help our residents understand some of the context in which we have to operate and the limitations of all the legal acts and other requirements that we have to do, as well as our budget limitations. So this is hopefully a continuation, but a better guided dialogue in which we learn from each other about what is best for this community and how best they want us to spend the funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Councillor Cordy, do you wish to speak now or later? Councillor Lehman.
Councillor Mason, could you just read out your again, please? Yeah, the recommendation, because there's wording that I find uncomfortable.
Councillor Layton.
Good. That word?
What? No.
So it's that council adopts the community engagement policy, of which the purpose of this policy is to guide best practice, community engagement process to do good consultation that influences our decision making.
Thank you. The word guide seems a little bit underpowered because we are really mandating what should be done.
So is this your opposition to the motion? Are you arguing that, is your argument that there should be a change of wording in the motion, or that fundamentally opposing the motion? Right, so you're not arguing directly over the table, you're just stating your point of view.
The policy seems to be directive rather than, even though we say we're going to discuss that, it seems to be directive. So that's all.
I'll have that in the right of reply.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got 2 points. One is I just need to draw the attention to our fellow councillors that in the documentation there is a few words there that may require some funding, and I just want to bring that to your attention. And as we're discussing the budget shortly, that maybe we need to look at being able to fund this policy. Now my second point is I haven't got a problem with the title, but that's fine. And for me, I think there's a missing piece to the community engagement policy. And what I refer to as an outward-looking framework. And I have a little anagram for this, and I call it a BIP approach. And the BIP approach stands for branding, image and projection. And how we as a council are seen and perceived as an organisation in our immediate community and across the state. So I think that there is another part to this policy that we at some stage would need to look at, because it's an outward-looking concept and the way that we are viewed rather than an inward process. But apart from that, it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Essoff. Maybe you're thinking of adding an extra line to your car. Now, where are we? Councillor Cordy, you seconded this. Yes, but yes, Councillor Gardner, we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, we're all having it go, so might as well. In terms of the money, obviously that is something we'll consider, but it's part of the budget process, and that's just the way it is. A bit miffed, really, because this really is a policy which is, in some ways, is an internal policy, where it's giving staff direction in that they have to probably plan and communicate a bit better to our community. And that's what it is. It's nothing more than that. Correct. I haven't lost something? Okay, cool. So, underpinning it is probably the thing that's more important, and then embedding it into the organisation to make it happen. And that's the toolkit. So they're there. Communication strategies, policies, engagement. There's so many different words, frames, and things. They're actually really complex, and I don't know that anyone ever gets it right. I think it's a good policy to guide staff in when they're doing projects. There's certain things they have to do and processes, and it's good.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Now, where are we? So, Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to comment that I support Councillor Mason's motion, because basically if we can get the communication right, things will run more effectively. We've had a couple of examples tonight where the communication with the community hasn't been so good, trees and bridges to be precise, and we could have done better, and I fully support Councillor Mason's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. And you wish to have a right of reply? Just to wrap it all up? Yeah.
Can I put a question to Ms Knight first, just as a clarification? Thank you. My understanding is that this is part of a suite of policies around our customer charter, our communication policy, and our engagement policy. Is there anything else in there?
So yes, you're correct. So we have an overarching community engagement framework. What's sitting in there is this policy. Underpinning this policy is procedure and a toolkit. Aligning with all of that is the customer service charter and the communication strategy.
Thank you. So I think it's important to recognise that, and I take what you're saying, Councillor Lesser, that this is not the only thing we're doing in engagement. There's it's supporting a much better relationship, building trust with our community. In relation to your word mandate, what it's saying here is that we have to do it. However, we're not going to mandate precisely how you do it, because each situation is going to be different. There will be different risks, whether it's local, whether it's Shire-wide, whether it's what one would think would be trimming a tree would be simple, but it obviously isn't, compared to bringing in a climate emergency declaration. They're all quite different. So the engagement policy, the engagement process will change, but it will happen.
Thank you, Councillor Manchin. Well, so we better take a vote on this. So we've had opposition. So those in favour of the motion? Few. Those against? Declare the matter carried. Okay. And now we move on to the Harcourt Place-based construction budget. No, councillors, please, mind your manners.
Always about
So here we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Yes, Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor, mate. Thanks, Mayor Henderson. I have a motion that's slightly different, so I'll read it out in its entirety. Thank you. The recommendation: the Council approves an allocation of $75,000 from the Open Space Reserve to enable the construction contract for the preferred design Stanley Park Place Space to proceed. So the difference is that I've struck out the words advertising and of, and other than that it's as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Neiman. Is there any opposition? No, Malden's staying quiet there for the time being. All right. Well, in that case, Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Look, Mayor, this is a fantastic project, and it's entirely appropriate that we access a little bit of top-up funding from the Open Spaces Reserve to make sure that we get the project that the community needs, and it's going to be fantastic, so let's get it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Neiman, do you wish to speak? Councillor Manchin?
Thank you. I very much support Councillor Cordy's motion. And I know that one of the reasons why I do support it is that this has come out of considerable community engagement.
Any other councillor wish to speak? No, well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. And I certainly echo Councillor Machen's voice there, that considerable community engagement. It does seem to be one area where we're very good at consulting with and engaging the public, is when there are children and young people involved in using our playground equipment. They've all got very strong ideas on what they want and what they don't want, and so successful play spaces, playgrounds cropping up all around our shire. It's one of our great success stories. Thank you. And now, moving on to our economy, we have a financial report for the 6 months to December, so it's quarterly finances up to December 2019.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
I recommend the Council notes the financial management report for the 6 month period to the 31st of December 2019.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Cordy. Any opposition? No. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Lesler?
Just briefly, that this has been through the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee on the 27th of February, and they're a lot better eyes down there than some of us, but there was no opposition to that.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Well, okay, so I declare the matter carried. Now we come to the annual plan Q2 progress report for 2019-2020. I have a motion. Do I have Councillor Machen? Yes, you wish to?
As printed.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Lesler. Any opposition? No, thank you. So, wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Machen?
Very briefly, this is an annual plan showing how we're going in roughly halfway through our last budget and annual plan. We're doing pretty well, and it's good to see that.
I'm not going to ask about the dog park.
I was desperately not asking about dog parks. So I think these reports are always a good reminder of just how much we do, the great deal of services that we do, and it's always worth considering, particularly as we're considering the next budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Which brings us on to delegates' reports. Oh, sorry, any other councillor have a delegate report for us? No? Okay. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Can I deal with something I didn't do at the last meeting, which I should have done, which was to thank Brett Martini for coming to us to help us while we're filling the vacancy of the Director of Infrastructure and Development. Very kind of Brett to have given us his time. I'm mentioning this because he won't be at the next meeting, I don't expect. His time runs out before then, and we will have the new permanent director in place at that next meeting, I expect. But has been a fantastic addition to our team, albeit for a very short time. Very generous of Brett and very generous of Craig Newman of City Greater Bendigo to loan one of his most senior staff to us for the amount of time that he has, Mayor. So I wanted to mention that. And with that, I was going to mention one of the things on the list that Brett attended with me in the last month was meeting at the EnviroShop newsstand. The representatives of EnviroShop there, Frank and Nick, thank you. We spent a good hour and a half or so there talking with Frank and Nick about not only just what their business is about, but what's going on at an environmental level in our community from their perspective, from a business perspective, and then what the opportunity is for the future for not only outside of the organisation but inside the organisation for some of the things that you are bringing up to do with electric cars and the like. And they are fantastic, as you probably know, and certainly Councillor Neiman knows. They have an electric I was going to say petrol pump, but it's an electric charging station which they offer for free. This is a shameless plug for this business because I just think they're amazing. Fantastic that they are offering that facility, and I understand that's already encouraged many people in at least Newstead, if not a little bit further, to get into the electric car market because they know that there's a reasonable charging station not far away from where they are. So I thought that was terrific, Mayor. Some of the figures that I think they quoted to us was they're doing assessments for, on average, about 3 houses a week across our community, looking at how the houses are set up and what the opportunity to improve the efficiency of the house is, and then the supply systems of energy to the house. And very strongly say electricity is the future, gas is the past, and trying to get lots and lots of people behind that idea. And I think it's just an excellent service that they're offering that is end to end. It's not just, here's some ideas for you, give us some money. They actually suggest what ideas there are for people and how they can make progressive improvements to their house as they can afford them, and then they stay with them and they record the impacts of those improvements that they make over time, and then they stay with them over time to maintain all of the initiatives that help the people find. So, Mayor, it was a great visit. We really, they probably had to walk away from us. I think we were still asking lots more questions of them after about an hour and a half. So I just wanted to mention that one, Mayor. Happy to answer questions as always.
Thank you, John. Well, I certainly should echo on behalf of councillors our thanks that Brett's been with us. He's just hasn't batted an eyelid almost when we said, what about X, which has been a historical factor from months, years back, and he's gone and delved in the archives and interrogated the staff that he's been managing and has come up with answers and solutions, and we really appreciate the fact he's been able to jump in. Just shows the calibre of the staff and City of Greater Bendigo that you're able to poach for us now and again. Thanks very much. No, it's been great to have you here, Brett. Thank you. I just want to mention that we had a meeting regarding the Main Street trees in Taradale, which are up there, I suppose, the different story altogether. Taradale is graced by a few small ornamental pear trees. It used to have pine trees back in the day, those big cypress pines. They've been removed, and but part of the small town streetscapes is to put in trees. I think just about all of the small towns we've been considering want trees in their main street, and Taradale has been targeted as one that can have some trees this next coming planting tree. The only thing was we had to decide which trees, and I thought we were going to have Tree Wars Mark III, but no, we all met on a rather cold day with Kath Olive, manager of places and spaces and everything else. Sorry, I'm still using an old title. And she was very efficient and worked out what the majority view was and guided us all down that track. And so we've chosen to have particular kind of oaks planted in the street. People were concerned not to put a whole row of future fire-prone trees and changing climate. So we selected oaks which are known for their fire retardant properties, and hopefully they will get planted this winter and be a legacy into the future for the next 200 years or so. So that's pretty exciting. That comes about. That was that meeting I went to. So apart from that, I think we can leave it there and move on and say no notices of motion, no urgent special business, and so now we come to a confidential report where I have to close the meeting.
Thank you.
So nice to see you here, Beth.